Welcome back, everyone. Today we will be reading Chapter 11, so let's get into it. Man, Josh said, I cannot believe the world is ending. Stop saying that, Janet said. Order, Elliot said, not for the first time. In the court. Poppy said nothing. She was thinking. Her mouth twisted to one side. They were in the high square room in Castle Whitespire where the kings and queens met every day at 5 o'clock. The flaming ruins of a 5-alarm sunset smoldered in the window behind her, which was currently pointing west. It can't really all be going to end, she said finally. And yet, that was Janet. I feel like I just got here. I did just get here. Do you have any other evidence that it's ending? I mean, besides Embers say so? Sweetie, he is the god of us, Josh said. He probably knows. He's not infallible. How do you know? Because if he were infallible, Janet put in, he wouldn't be such a twat all the time. Janet never shrank from taking both sides of an argument at once. You know, Josh said, I bet it's because of sacrilege like that that the world is ending. Your earthy, irreverent sense of humor has doomed us all. Poppy does have a point, Elliot said. Don't forget that the first time we met Ember, he was a prisoner. Martin Chatwin had him locked away in Ember's tomb. So, he's not omnipotent, Josh said, clinging to his point. He might still be infallible. Either way, he never tells us everything he knows. Elliot adjusted his crown, which had gotten crooked. Not till it's too late. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's going on now. All Ember is saying so far is that if it continues on its present course, the world is going to end. That doesn't mean Fillory can't be saved, necessarily. He waited for somebody to jump in. Nobody did. What I'm suggesting is that maybe we, its kings and queens, could save it. Sure, Janet said. We could put on a show. We could use the old barn. I'm making a serious point. Yes, and I'm mocking your serious point to show how ludicrous it is. Look, Ember is a god, Elliot said. But he's a god only to Fillory. He's limited. He doesn't know everything there is to know about the wider universe. I think we should poke around some ourselves, see if he's missed something. See how far our royal power can stretch. See if we can get an advance look at this so-called apocalypse. Maybe we can head it off at the pass. This was met with more silence, while everybody tried to think of a reason why what Elliot was proposing might be plausible or achievable. Yeah, no, of course, Josh said. I mean, we're going to go down fighting, right? Right. Loyal Poppy gave a swift nod of her sharp chin. So, what? Janet said. We just head back into the wilderness, looking for adventure, and whatever comes our way? That's right, Elliot said. That's what we do. She weighed the suggestion. Okay, but I'm coming this time. Last time I got stuck babysitting the country and you guys were gone for like a year and a half. When do we leave? ASAP. And what if we can't? Poppy said. What if we can't head it off? Janet shrugged. I guess we go back home. I mean, to our other home, our formal home. That's what the Netherlands is for, Josh said. Guys, listen. Elliot leaned forward. He put on his High King face and his High King voice. At times like this, he wanted to look as much as possible like Elrond, Lord of Rivendell from The Lord of the Rings, and he didn't think he was a million miles off base. He made eye contact with each one of them in turn. I know I don't speak for all of you. Not in this. Not if Ember is right, if Fillory really is ending. I'm going to stay and see it end. This land is where I became who I am, who I was meant to be. Who I am is who I am in Fillory, and if Fillory dies, then I'll die with it. He studied his kingly fingernails. I think I made that choice a long time ago. I don't expect you to make it with me, but I want you to know, there isn't any going back. Not for me. The crescent moon was already visible, early today, opposite the sunset, hooking a pale horn over the rim of the world. Elliot could picture it, the rim of the world, now that he'd been there, with its endless brick wall and its narrow gray strip of beach and its single door to the far side. The tower was high enough that sometimes you could kid yourself that you could really see it on a clear day, which this was. Josh cocked his head and screwed up his face and studied Elliot with one eye. He pointed at him, hesitantly. "Fuck you!" Elliot cracked his crooked grin. Everybody relaxed. "Look, it sucks," he said. "I hate it. But we'll take it as far as we can, and then we'll walk away. We'll go back to Earth, have a decent drink for a change. We'll see what Quentin's up to." "Oh, God," Quentin said, or Janet said. "I think death might be preferable." Everybody laughed except for Poppy, who was still thinking. "I just wish..." She broke off and gave a shaky sigh to try to calm herself down. It mostly worked. Josh took her hand under the table. "What is it, sweetie?" "It's just that if it all ends, then the baby will never see Fillory. I know it's silly, but I wanted the baby to be born here. I wanted him to see all of this. Or her. I wanted us to have a little prince or princess." "There'll still be one baby," Josh said. "Whatever happens, we'll be royalty in exile. It still counts." "No," Janet said. "It doesn't." In the end, it was only Janet and Elliot who went, for the simple reason that Josh couldn't really ride a horse yet, not even a talking one who could coach him. And anyway, Poppy was feeling sick, and Josh didn't want to leave her. So it was just the two of them. It felt very different from when they'd set out to fight the Lorians, or even from when they'd gone hunting in the old days. It was quieter, more somber. They rode out shortly after dawn through a small stone arch in the rear of the castle that led out on a narrow trail, hardly more than a goat track, that ran along the tops of the cliffs overlooking the bay. No fanfare, no confetti, no loyal retainers. They were alone. "Which way?" Janet said. Elliot pointed north. No particular reason. It was just good to be decisive in these situations. The grass was still wet. The new pink sun hovered low above Whitespire Bay. Elliot felt very small, and Fillory felt, for a change, very big and very wild around him. It was a while since it had felt like that. This was a serious quest, maybe the last one. What happened now truly mattered. Elliot had struggled before he found Fillory. He knew that. He drank too much. He found clever ways to be nasty to people. He never seemed to have an emotion that wasn't either ironic or chemically generated. He'd changed in Fillory, and the thought of going back to that, of becoming that person again, frightened him. He wouldn't die with Fillory. He'd meant that when he said it. But if Fillory died, Elliot knew that something in him, something small but essential, wouldn't survive either. He wouldn't miss the interminable summer, though. It had a certain fiery majesty to it, and he appreciated that, but at this point, he was dying for the heat to break. A hot early morning wind surged through the trees, thick and strong like a flowing river, combing through the leaves, which were green but yellowing in the drought. The trees must know what was coming, he thought. If Julia were here, she could have asked them. Whitespire, the town as opposed to the castle or the bay, was of modest size, and it didn't take them long to reach the outskirts. It was surrounded by a wall of irregular height and composition, a patchwork of building materials, brick and stone and mortar and timber and rammed earth, that had been demolished and rebuilt and then buttressed up to keep the whole business from falling over as the town expanded and contracted over the centuries. Beyond the wall were fields full of people, shoulder deep in golden grain, with huge baskets on their backs, like in a Bruegel painting. They fell silent as Elliot and Janet passed. Most of them took a knee as well as bowed their heads. Elliot and Janet nodded. He'd long ago figured out that it was better to accept the fealty. Modesty and self-depreciation were just confusing in a king. A half hour later, they were through the fields and addressing themselves to the Queenswood north of the city. They pulled up just short of it. There was no underbrush at the edge. The border with the fields around it was clean and clear. It wasn't a natural wood. Elliot had a formal feeling, as if they were presenting themselves at a ball. "Good evening, my old friend. Shall we dance once more?" "After you," Janet said. "Oh, fuck off." If you rode with a queen, the queen must enter the Queenswood first. That was the rule. The trees, huge, crotchy, black-barked oaks, covered with gnarls and knots that always seemed to be about to form a face, but never quite did, slid smoothly apart like stage scenery. Janet urged her horse forward. "Any idea where we're going?" "We discussed this. That's not how quests work. We're not going to think about it. We're just going to journey." "I can't not think about it." "Well, don't overthink it." "I can't help it," Janet said. "Whatever you can do, whatever. You can do the not thinking for both of us." They sat the bright morning behind for the permanent twilight of the deep forest. The clopping of the horses' hooves became a deeper thump clumping as the way went from cobblestones to ancient packed loam. Excuse me. "What if nothing happens?" Janet said. "Nothing is going to happen, at least at first. We have to be patient. That's part of the quest." "Well, just so you know, I'm doing this for a week," Janet said. "That's it. 7 days. I know what a week is. The way I think of this," she went on, "is it's like we're taking Fillory's pulse. This is a diagnostic quest. We're saying, are you still functioning? You wondrous magic land, you? Are you going to give us an adventure? And is this adventure going to be your way of telling us what's wrong with you and how to fix you? If so, great. But if by a week we haven't gotten into shit, I'm calling it. Time of death, Fillory's flatlining." "A week is not a lot of time," Elliot pointed out, "in which to decide the fate of an entire world." "Elliot, I love you like the brother I never had or wanted," Janet said. "But actually, a week is a really long time. After a week, you and I are going to be really, really sick of each other." Their path wound and wended and looped through the Queenswood, drawn apparently on the spur of the moment by the arboreal hive mind. One could try to steer one's way through it, but this time they set the autopilot and let it ride and took what came. It was eerily quiet. The trees of the Queenswood tended to pick off fauna they didn't care for, falling branches, straggling roots, which left only some deer and a few decorative birds. The forest floor was furred with vast herds of ferns and striped with light that slipped in through chance gaps in the canopy overhead. There were no fallen trunks. The Queenswood buried its dead. The trees parted and parted before them. It was vaguely erotic, Elliot thought, like endless pairs of legs spreading, unshearing them on and on into more and more intimate spaces. They burrowed deep and deeper in. Occasionally the path forked, and he picked one fork or the other for no reason, but always without hesitating. like a magician producing a dove from a hidden pocket. The wood abruptly brought them to the circular meadow with the giant clock tree inside it, the one where they'd found the seeing hare, and where Jollibee had died. The tree had a deep sunken scar where its clock had been, a blinded cyclops, but at least it wasn't thrashing anymore. It was at peace. The sapling Elliot had extracted the watch from to give to Quentin had died. He was sorry about that, but not so sorry that he wished he hadn't done it. It was worth it to know that wherever he was, Quentin at least had that with him. They decided to spend the night there. If history was any guide, it was a good place to await something fantastical and portentous. Janet swung down out of the saddle. "I'll get us dinner." "They packed us dinner at the castle," Elliot said. "I ate it for lunch." In businesslike fashion, Janet pulled a short staff from a pair she wore across on her back and trotted off into the trees. Elliot had never seen her wield a staff before, but she held it as if she knew what to do with it. He said. It was a spooky place to be alone in, especially without his queen. The grass was dotted with wildflowers. He'd always meant to name some of the Florian flowers, but he'd never gotten around to it, and now he probably never would. It was too late. He heard a rustling, crackling sound from all sides which alarmed him until he realized that the trees along the edge of the meadow were helpfully dropping dead branches for firewood. They must have accepted his presence, he thought. It was strangely touching. From one saddlebag, Elliot extracted their tent, a neat canvas parcel, and tossed it on the soft grass. It unfolded and erected itself in the deepening twilight, with a sound like a sail being hoisted in a high wind. In the morning, a fine mist hung over the meadow, as if a heavy cannonade had just moments ago ceased firing, leaving behind puffs of silent white gun smoke in the air. They rode all day without incident. "That's 2 down, 5 to go," Janet said. And by sunset, they'd reached the end of the green splendor of the Queen's Wood and entered the adjacent maze of gray firs called the Wormwood. On the 3rd day, they forded the Burnt River, never a pleasant experience, though rarely actually dangerous. Its black water was always choked with ashes. Nobody knew why, and the nymph who lived in it was the glossy black of a beetle, a terrifying creature with silvery eyes who went up and down the river at night screaming. Elliot proposed trying to talk to her, but Janet shuddered. "That's a last resort," she said. "That's like day 6. Whatever. It's not the end of the world. FYI, you only get to make that joke one time, so I hope you enjoyed it." Elliot would have preferred to head west from there, toward the lakes called Umber's Tears, or maybe to Berrien, a mellow-walled hill town where they made an incredible clear liquor out of some native grain. Elliot maintained a comfy royal townhouse there that he hardly ever got to visit, but Janet wanted to ride north. "That would be fine," Elliot said, "except that there's this horrible thing called the Northern Marsh. It's north of here, hence the name." "That's why I want to go north. I want to go there. I'm feeling the marsh." "I'm not. I hate that place." "Wow. I thought you were supposed to be all Johnny Quest over here." "Fine. I'll meet you in Berrien." "But I don't want to go to Berrien alone," Elliot said. "Your whininess is beyond unattractive. Come with me to the marsh, and then we'll go on to Berrien." "What if I die in the Northern Marsh? People do, you know." "Then I'll go to Berrien alone. I like traveling alone. If you die, can I have your townhouse?" Elliot said nothing. Privately, and very much in spite of himself, Elliot understood that Janet was having a hunch about the marsh, and you couldn't ignore those, not in the context of a quest. "Fine," he said. "I was just testing your resolve. Gloriously, you have passed. To the marsh we go." The Northern Marsh wasn't actually as far north as all that, By late afternoon, the ground had begun to get squishy, and they made camp on its outskirts that same night. The next day dawned gray and brisk, and they picked their way through cattails and coarse grass and chilly puddles until the horses refused to go any farther. Janet's was a talking horse, and he politely explained that he was speaking for both him and his dumb companion when he said that this was not a place you wanted to cross on hooves, not when your legs break as easily as horses' legs do. Elliot accepted their resignation graciously. The two of them went on foot. The air was full of the smell of warm mud and rotting things. They circled around big, weedy expanses of standing water and occasionally waded through them when they had to. The great northern marsh was a lonely, quiet place. You would have thought it would be full of frogs and insects and waterfowl, but nothing seemed to live there. Just a lot of plants and smelly microbes. As they forced their way deeper in, the ground became mudflats and water punctuated by occasional stubborn hummocky tufts of grass. Their boots were getting hopelessly befouled, and Elliot felt the ratio of solid ground to water shifting slowly and inexorably in the water's favor. The way was bordering on impassable when they found a narrow boardwalk, which Janet had been looking for without telling him. It was just two thin, weather-beaten gray planks laid flat over the sucking puddles, and in places elevated a few feet off the ground by stilts and pilings and opportunistic tree stumps. Elliot took a minute to scrape his boots off, though he was pretty sure they weren't salvageable. Then they set off again. There were no railings, and they had to balance their way along like a damn circus act. He tried to remember whether quicksand was a real thing or an urban myth. "I wonder where all the birds are," he said, to take his mind off it. "I've seen, 2 birds. This place should be covered in them." "Makes you wish Julia were still here," Janet said. "She was good with birds." Do you wish she were here?" "Of course. I always liked Julia." "You didn't show it very often," Elliot said. "If you really got Julia," Janet said, "you would have understood that she didn't like people who were too demonstrative with their affections." This caused Elliot to retroactively evaluate a lot of the interactions he remembered between Janet and Julia. Their footsteps sounded hollow on the boards in the marshy hush. "Incredible that this thing is still standing," Janet went on. "I can't imagine who keeps it up." "How do you even know this place?" "I was out here once, when you all were away at sea. I thought somebody should survey it. It looked weird and interesting. I ran into some scary shit and backed off, but not before I met some weird and interesting people." Elliot wondered, not for the first time, what exactly Janet had gotten up to while the rest of them were off sailing the ocean blue. He'd gotten the official version, of course, which was that she'd been running the country and doing an excellent job of it. But every once in a while, Janet said things that made him wonder if that was the whole story. "Do you ever wish you went with her? Julia, I mean. To that other side deal, whatever it was called?" "I think about it sometimes," Elliot said, "but no, there's no way I could have gone. Being king here is who I am. I wasn't joking about that part before." He wobbled for a moment on a rocky board. "I wish I knew what it was like, though." "Probably it's not as marshy. You know the funny part?" "Tell me." "I know how Poppy feels," Janet said. "About the baby. I want that little guy to see Fillory too. I want it to rule when we're gone." Elliot wasn't sure if a person born in Fillory could rule Fillory, but he was more focused at this exact moment on his own possible imminent death at the hands or other extremities of this horrible swamp and whatever lived in it. He supposed that if he sank to the bottom of it, his corpse might be perfectly preserved for later generations, like those bodies that got pulled out of the Irish bogs. That would have a certain grandeur to it. But probably he'd be eaten before that happened. And after that, the world would end anyway, so... That's what happens to the birds, by the way, Janet pointed out. She was having no trouble keeping her balance. She didn't even look at her feet as she walked. In the distance, something pale, pale translucent pink floated, drifting, 30 feet above the cattails. It looked just like a jellyfish, with long floral tentacles dangling down. It was an unspeakably sinister sight, an alien aerial parasite. A dying sparrow fluttered in one of the tendrils, stuck to it like a fly, stuck to flypaper. Wow, he said. Don't touch that one. The venom's really bad. Stops your heart. I wasn't going to. How do they fly? Helium or hydrogen? Or hot air or something? Nah, just magic. They must have been getting close to the center of the swamp because the ponds were getting wider and deeper and darker and more still. And they were connecting up with each other to the point where the swamp was on the point of just being a regular lake. A steamy mist was gathering around them. Here and there a lotus flower poked up above the surface, a rosy white bulb the size of a softball on the thick green stem. Strange that something so pure and lovely could grow out of all that muck. One clean, perfect thing distilled out of the filth. Elliot had a hard time not thinking about the vast shape he'd seen last time he'd flown over the northern marsh. He hoped it stuck to deeper water. Though that appeared to be where they were headed. The boardwalk rose high up above the marsh now on long, spindly pilings, more like a narrow jetty, and it was taking them straight out over the lake. The banks vanished into the fog. Elliot felt disoriented, abandoned by the gods. If this adventure were working the way it should have been, they would have learned something by now, he thought. Seen something, felt something. Instead, they were nowhere, with nothing ahead of them and nothing behind them, suspended in midair, on dead wood over a black mirror of dead water. How far are we? This far. The boardwalk ended abruptly. If Janet hadn't put her hand on his shoulder, he might have walked straight off it. There was a rickety ladder leading down in case he was overcome by the urge to do some recreational bathing. Got a question for an old friend, Janet said. Hey! She shouted it out over the water. Hey! There was no echo. She looked around. Should have brought a rock to throw. Hey! They waited. Something jumped in the stillness, a frog or a fish, but Elliot turned his head too slowly to catch it. When he turned back, the water wasn't still anymore. The first sign of it was a broad, smooth bow wave that rushed silently toward them, wetting the stilts halfway up. Elliot instinctively stood on tiptoe as it passed. Then, a massive, rigid, warty olive shell broke the surface, 50 feet across, like a submarine breaching. It was a turtle, a snapping turtle by its beak, which was hooked like a falcon's. Christ, the thing was a leviathan. No wonder nothing lived here. The jellyfish ate the birds out of the air, and this thing must scour the water of anything with more than 2 cells to rub together. Huge bubbles of methane were surfacing around it, released from the mud it must have been buried in. The smell was indescribable. Or, actually, no, it wasn't indescribable. It smelled like shit. Who calls the Prince of the Mud? The snapping turtle spoke slowly. Its voice was raspy, an old chain smoker's. Its head was blunt and blocky and a little bit comic, kind of like a talking thumb. Its piggy eyes were set deep in nests of horny skin, which made it look angry, which Elliot was going to assume it was until it proved otherwise. Oh, it said. You. Yeah, me. Pooh, you smell. The smell of life. The smell of farts. Got a question for you. What else do you have for me? I cannot eat questions. The hunting has been poor. Its huge face was all hide and beak. Its neck was as thick as its head. Oh, I don't know. Sometimes Elliot wondered if Janet were a little bit sociopathic. How else could she possibly sound bored and casual in this situation? Though Elliot knew she had feelings, she just kept them in different places from most people. We've got a couple of horses. Answer my question and we'll talk. Elliot kept his face blank. She had to be bluffing. No way was Janet giving this thing the horses. I'm High King Elliot, he said. He owns this shithole, Janet said. I am Prince of the Mud, she cut him off. Which Elliot owns, we know. You're a giant turtle. Your kingdom may be wide, but it is spread thin. Mine runs deep. It turned its head slowly from side to side, studying them with first one mat-looking eye, then the other. A jellyfish drifted past, its tendrils limply brushing the turtle's forehead, but the Leviathan didn't appear to notice. Ember says Fillory is dying, Elliot said. What do you think? Is it true? Death, life, a fish dies. 1 billion mites eat it and live. In the swamp, there is no difference. There is to the fish, Janet said. You're a shitty philosopher, so don't try. Is Fillory dying? If turtles had shoulders, it would have shrugged. Yes, then Fillory is dying. Give me horses. Wait, are you serious? Janet was pissed now. She looked like she hadn't believed it until this moment. It's really ending? Well, can we stop it? You cannot. We can't, Elliot said. But maybe there's somebody who could? I cannot say. Ask the queen. I'm the queen, Janet said. Or, I'm a queen. I'm the main queen. I'm asking you. Queen of the dwarves and the barons. Enough. Give me horses or let me be. The turtle began to sink slowly, withdrawing its head under the shelf of its shell, barely disturbing the black water till its chin rested on the surface. I don't know any dwarf queens, Janet said. You know any dwarf queens, Elliot? Heck no, because there aren't any female dwarves. They don't exist. She doesn't exist, Janet said to the turtle. Try again. Listen closer. The snapping turtle snapped. Its head shot out to maximum extension. Elliot wouldn't have believed anything that big could move that fast. It was like a Mack truck coming straight at them. As it bit, it turned its head on one side to take them both in one movement. Elliot reacted fast. His reaction was to crouch down and cover his face with his arms. From the relative safety of this position, he felt the day grow colder around them, and he heard a crackle, which at first he took for the pier splintering in the turtle's jaws, but the end didn't come. You dare? Janet said. Her voice was loud now. It made the boards vibrate sympathetically under her feet. He looked up at her. She'd gone airborne, floating 2 feet above the pier, and her clothes were rimmed with frost. She radiated cold. Mist sheeted off of her skin as it would off dry ice. Her arms were spread wide, and she had an axe in each hand. They were those twin staves she wore on her back, each one now topped with an axe head of clear ice. The turtle was trapped in mid-lunge. She'd stopped it cold. The swamp was frozen solid around it. Janet had called down winter, and the water of the northern marsh was solid ice as far as he could see. Cracked and buckled up in waves. The turtle was stuck fast in it. It struggled. Its head banged back and forth impotently. Jesus, Elliot said. He stood up out of his defensive crouch. Nice one. You dare? Janet said again, all in perilous power. Marvel that you live. Prince of shit. The turtle didn't seem surprised, just mad. I'll have you. It hissed, and it surged and strained. The ice squeaked and groaned and started to split. Janet leaned into the casting, however she was doing it, and froze the swamp harder and tighter. I will freeze your eyes, she said, and shatter them. I will split your shell and pick out the meat. Jesus, where did she get this stuff? The turtle strained once more and then was still, like a great ship frozen in Arctic pack ice. It stared at them furiously, its eyes burning with murder. Janet let herself float down to the wooden boards. Fuck you, Janet said. You know better. Next time, I'll kill you. She spat, and the gob froze in midair and slid across the ice. With that, she turned and walked away. Elliot practically fell off the boardwalk, getting out of her way. He didn't want to touch those axes. He felt like he should say something too before he went, so he did. Dick? Worm? The turtle rasped back, its breath smoked in the sudden cold. You'll see. It's turtles all the way down. Yeah, sure, he said. I've heard that before. He trotted off after Janet. She left frost footprints behind her. That's it for this week. We'll see you guys next week with Chapter 12.